Imagine you have this massive project due next week. You know exactly what to do, you possess the talent to pull it off, and you even have the time blocked out on your calendar.
Yeah, all the right intentions.
Right. But instead of actually sitting down to work, you suddenly feel this overwhelming urge to clean your entire kitchen.
Oh, the sudden need for a spotless house.
Exactly. Then you check social media for, like, the 10th time. Maybe you fall down a rabbit hole of random documentary videos, and suddenly it's midnight.
Yeah, and the guilt sets in.
It really does. You are exhausted, you're filled with guilt, and you have
Right.
made absolutely zero progress. I mean, we have all been there.
It is a universally recognizable feeling, honestly. And it's a uniquely painful one, too. The clock is just staring back at you, ticking away, and the longer you sit there, avoiding the task, the heavier the dread becomes.
Yeah, it's awful.
Like a very specific kind of psychological torture. It really is.
Yeah.
And we are diving straight into the mechanics of that exact feeling today. We are taking a deep dive into some fascinating insights from the perfectionism trap.
It's such a great source.
It is. And our mission today is to completely shatter a massive cultural myth. The idea that procrastination is just, well, another word for laziness.
Right, which it isn't.
Not at all. We are going to explore why the most intelligent, capable people are actually the most vulnerable to falling into this trap. And we want to leave you with a specific psychological blueprint to dismantle that invisible emotional wall that's keeping you stuck.
Making that distinction between laziness and procrastination is the absolute baseline we need to establish here. Society constantly conflates the two.
Yeah, they use them interchangeably.
Exactly. When we see someone delaying an important task, the immediate assumption is just a lack of discipline. We assume they just don't care about their future or their responsibilities.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the underlying emotional reality, it couldn't be more different, right?
Not at all. I mean, a genuinely lazy person simply does not want to do the work. And crucially, they feel perfectly fine about that choice.
Yeah, they're having a great time.
Right. They go watch TV and genuinely enjoy the TV. There is no internal conflict there. A procrastinator, on the other hand, is in agony.
Absolute agony.
They desperately want to do the work, they care deeply about the results, but every time they try to start, they hit a brick wall. So if this invisible wall isn't made of incompetence and isn't a lack of time, what exactly is it made of?
What's fascinating here is that the wall is constructed entirely by the mind's own hyperactive imagination.
Wait, real?
Yeah. When you have a highly intelligent, capable brain, you rarely look at a task and just see the literal immediate first step. You don't look at a laptop and think, I just need to type one sentence.
Oh, I see.
Instead, your powerful brain instantly fast forwards. It visualizes the entire lifespan of the project. It calculates the extremely high expectations you have for yourself. It anticipates the judgment of your peers, and it simulates like every single variable that could potentially go wrong along the way.
Oh, wow. So the intelligence is essentially weaponized against itself.
Exactly.
Before you have even picked up a pen, your brain has constructed this massive, complicated, terrifying mountain. You're just staring at the summit, feeling completely paralyzed before you've even taken a single step on the trail.
Precisely. The cognitive load just becomes unbearable.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the core of the perfectionism trap. It is the deeply ingrained, toxic belief that if a project cannot be executed flawlessly, it is fundamentally not worth attempting.
Right. If it's not perfect, it's garbage.
Yeah, and this usually stems from how capable people experience early success. Think about childhood for a second. If you were a kid who grasped concepts easily, you were likely praised heavily for being smart rather than for working hard.
Oh, that is a huge point. So you build an entire identity around effortless perfection.
Right.
Your internal logic gradually becomes, my value as a human being depends entirely on my ability to produce exceptional results without struggling.
And once that logic is locked in, the stakes for any new task become impossibly high because your core self-worth is entirely tied to your output. Then a complex, unclear project doesn't just feel like a regular Tuesday chore.
What does it feel like?
It registers to your nervous system as a literal threat to your identity. If you sit down, put your absolute heart and soul into the work, and the final result is only mediocre, your perfectionist mind interprets that as undeniable proof that you are not actually smart.
Oh, man. That is a psychologically devastating thought.
It really is.
It's a brilliant, albeit twisted, defense mechanism when you really look at it. It acts as an ego shield. By delaying the work, your brain creates a foolproof win-win excuse to protect your identity.
Yeah, it's very clear.
If you procrastinate until the last minute and the work turns out bad, your ego is safe. You can say, well, I only spent 2 hours on it. What did you expect? If I had more time, it would have been brilliant.
Exactly.
But if you pull it off and the work turns out good, you get to feed the ego even more. You're like, look at me, I'm a genius. I finished this entire massive project in one night.
You are completely insulating yourself from the vulnerability of actually testing your true limits. You protect the abstract idea of your limitless potential by violently refusing to test the reality of your current ability.
It's essentially like refusing to run a race because you've convinced yourself that if you don't shatter the world record, it means you've forgotten how to walk.
Yeah.
You just stay on the starting line to protect the fantasy that you're the fastest runner in the world.
That is a phenomenal analogy. But here is the friction with that. You are still standing on the starting line, and your brain is fully aware that you should be running.
Right, the deadline is still there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The brain is terrified of the mountain it built, yet it still desperately wants to feel capable and productive. So it finds a clever disguise. It creates the illusion of momentum without any of the risk.
The disguise of productivity.
Let's look at the example of Rahul from our source material because his story is, well, it's the perfect embodiment of this.
It really is.
So Rahul is highly capable, a fast learner, and he is gunning for a major promotion. His manager hands him a massive opportunity, create a high-stakes presentation for a vital client.
It is the exact kind of project he has been asking for. But the stakes are sky high, which means the ego threat is at its absolute maximum.
Right. So Rahul sits down, opens his laptop, stares at the blank white screen, and completely freezes. The internal monologue is just screaming, if this isn't the most amazing presentation they've ever seen, I'm not getting the promotion and I'm a fraud.
And you can feel the physical anxiety hit him like a wave. His heart rate probably spikes right then and there.
Yeah. So to escape that deeply uncomfortable physiological feeling, Rahul pivots. He decides he's just going to reply to a few emails first. You know, clean off the digital desk.
So a very familiar move.
Then he organizes his project folders. He color codes his calendar. By the time he logs off, his inbox is pristine, 0 unread messages. His files are immaculate. But that presentation screen, it is still completely blank.
He exhausted himself. He worked incredibly hard for 8 straight hours, but he poured all of that intellectual energy into the entirely wrong things.
Yeah.
He engaged in productive procrastination.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I have to push back on this just a bit.
Sure.
Aren't clean emails, an organized calendar, and a structured filing system inherently good things? I mean, being organized is a huge part of being a functional professional.
It is, yeah.
So how do you, or how does anyone listening, actually know the difference between legitimately organizing your workflow and falling into this trap?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the distinction lies entirely in the underlying motivation. Organization is fantastic, but it becomes a trap the exact moment you use those low-stakes tasks to actively run away from your anxiety-inducing priority.
I see.
Doing easy work specifically to avoid hard work is the hallmark of productive procrastination. It is emotional regulation disguised as task management, and the real danger is how modern environments amplify this.
Oh, the modern distraction landscape is a minefield for the smart procrastinator. We aren't just distracted by mindless things anymore. We are distracted by an endless sea of educational content.
Right. Technology has engineered a reality where we can find infinite distractions that feel totally legitimate.
Yeah, exactly.
You might be putting off writing a critical business proposal, but you spend an hour watching video essays on how to optimize your deep work. Or you read 3 different deep dive articles about industry trends.
You completely trick your own brain into feeling like you are making progress. You say, look at me, I'm not slacking off, I'm researching productivity, I'm preparing to work.
But you are merely delaying the inevitable discomfort of action.
Right. True learning, the kind that actually moves the needle in your life, only happens when you are in the trenches doing the difficult work, not when you are safely on the sidelines, passively consuming content about how to do the work.
Exactly.
It's a classic double-edged sword. Your curiosity and intelligence make you want to learn more, but you use that exact same desire to learn as an excuse to put something off.
And that leads to the inevitable breaking point.
Yeah.
Because you can only organize your inbox and watch productivity videos for so long. Eventually, the deadline actually arrives.
Right, which triggers the ultimate desperate coping mechanism, panic-induced focus. Because smart brains process information rapidly, they learn very early in life that they can technically survive on adrenaline.
It is a brutal biological shift. They wait until the 11th hour. The deadline is breathing down their neck. The social pressure of failing publicly reaches a boiling point, and the brain's executive function basically shuts down. Yeah, the amygdala takes over and dumps massive amounts of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline into the bloodstream. You shift from a state of complex critical thinking into literal fight or flight survival mode.
And suddenly, the entire emotional equation flips. The fear of not finishing the project finally eclipses the fear of the project not being perfect.
Exactly. The perfectionism doesn't go away. It is just violently overridden by pure survival instinct.
Yeah.
So they sit down, they stare at the screen, and they hammer out the work for 10 or 12 hours straight without sleeping, eating, or taking a break. They survive the deadline.
The irony is just wild to me. We use our big cable analytical brains to outsmart our own schedules, only to end up punishing our central nervous systems.
It's a heavy price to pay.
And the cost of operating this way is astronomical. First of all, the quality of the work is never a true reflection of the person's potential. It's just a reflection of what they can produce while having a minor panic attack.
Right.
But the deeper cost is psychological. It creates a brutal, repetitive cycle of extreme stress, physical exhaustion, and immense crushing guilt.
It erodes your self-trust. Over time, that cycle grinds your professional confidence into dust and breeds severe imposter syndrome.
Oh, for sure.
You walk around feeling like a complete fraud who is just tricking the world into thinking you are a capable adult, while secretly you are living in total unstructured chaos behind the scenes.
This raises an important question, though. How long can someone sustain this cycle of chaos before their mind and body just completely burn out?
You cannot run your life on last-minute adrenaline spikes indefinitely. Your adrenal glands will give out, your health will suffer, and the psychological toll will eventually bleed into every other area of your life.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Which means understanding the cycle. The perfectionism, the childhood praise, the ego shield, the adrenaline dump, that is only the diagnosis. We have to pivot to the cure. How do we bypass this deeply wired fear and finally learn to tackle a problem head on?
Yes. Let's get into the blueprint for rewiring this habit. The insights we've gathered point to a few very specific, practical strategies. And the very first step is going to sound incredibly counterintuitive, almost offensive to any perfectionist listening.
Oh, they're going to hate it.
They will.
Yeah.
You have to actively, purposefully lower your standards at the beginning of a task.
It feels incredibly wrong to the intelligent mind, but it is neurologically essential. You have to give yourself explicit, conscious permission to do a genuinely terrible job on the first attempt.
You have to write a horribly awkward paragraph. You have to design a messy, objectively ugly presentation slide. You have to practice your speech out loud and stumble over every other word.
Yeah, just let it be bad.
Because action, even terrible action, creates physical momentum. And momentum is what eventually sparks motivation. It is infinitely easier to edit and refine a poor piece of work than it is to conjure a flawless masterpiece out of a blank staring page.
You are bypassing the amygdala's alarm system. If you tell your brain, we are going to write a terrible draft, the ego doesn't feel threatened. There's no pressure, so the anxiety drops and the words can actually start flowing.
So what does this all mean? It's basically giving yourself permission to paint a really, really ugly picture just so you finally have some wet paint on the canvas to push around.
That is exactly it. Perfectionism is the absolute enemy of progress. You cannot edit a blank page. You must get the paint on the canvas. But to sustain that momentum, the second part of the cure requires a massive shift in your internal dialogue.
The self-talk.
Right. When capable people procrastinate, their internal voice is usually vicious. It's a constant loop of, why am I so lazy? Why is it so hard for me when everyone else seems to manage fine? Get it together.
Which is the ultimate doom loop. That harsh criticism just generates more shame and more anxiety, which then creates an even stronger urge to procrastinate to escape those negative feelings.
It just feeds itself.
You have to actively shift from harsh criticism to self-compassion. You have to treat yourself with the exact same grace you would offer a good friend who is struggling.
That's a great way to put it.
You need to acknowledge, out loud if necessary, that the task is legitimately difficult, and that feeling anxious about it is a completely normal human response, not a character flaw.
You are de-escalating the internal threat level. If the task is no longer a pass-or-fail test of your core worth as a human being, the ego doesn't need to throw up the shield to protect you from it.
Right.
But even after we have lowered our standards and forgiven ourselves a bit, that blank page can still feel heavy. The friction of starting is still the hardest part.
Which is why we have to talk about the physical mechanics of action. How do we trick the brain into taking that very first step? The key is to shrink the mountain. You have to break something down into micro steps.
Micro steps are everything.
The cardinal rule here is do not set massive, sweeping, time-based goals. Don't wake up and tell yourself, I'm going to study for 3 straight hours today, or I'm going to write this entire project before lunch.
If you set a massive goal like that, the mountain instantly reappears in your mind's eye. The brain registers the massive effort required, the anxiety spikes, and it will immediately start scanning the environment for an escape hatch like organizing your email.
Exactly. You have to make the initial step so ridiculously small that it is literally impossible to fail. You tell your brain, I am not writing a report. I'm just going to open the Word document and type bullet points for exactly 5 minutes. That's it. Or I am just going to read one single paragraph of this research paper.
And the magic of the micro step is what happens after those 5 minutes. Once you physically start, the friction vanishes. The anticipation of the work is almost universally worse than the reality of doing the work.
That is so true.
Once you are in motion, your brain prefers to stay in motion.
But I have to push back on this concept just a little bit.
Okay, what's the catch?
Because if I tell myself I'm only going to work for 5 minutes, but I know deep down that the report is going to take 4 hours, isn't that just literally lying to my own brain? Doesn't the brain catch on to the trick and realize the mountain is still hiding behind that 5-minute pebble?
That is a very fair critique. But think of it less as a lie and more as a negotiation with your own nervous system.
The negotiation?
Yeah, you aren't denying that the rest of the report exists. You are simply lowering the barrier to entry so you can sneak past the ego's overactive alarm system.
Oh, I like that.
The alarm only rings when it is forced to process the massive, identity-threatening mountain all at once. When it only has to process type for 5 minutes, the alarm stays quiet.
Makes sense.
And once you are 5 minutes in, your physiological state actually changes. The dread dissipates, you get a tiny hit of dopamine from completing the microstep, and suddenly, continuing for another 5 minutes feels entirely manageable.
The dread is heavier than the actual work. That is such a powerful realization. And to keep that momentum going once you've started, the final piece of the puzzle is connecting the microstep to a deeper purpose.
Yes, the why.
When you are deep in the weeds of a painfully boring spreadsheet or memorizing dry vocabulary words, it is so easy to lose the thread of why you are doing it in the first place. The task just feels like a chore.
You have to actively reframe the narrative in real time. You have to link the mundane, boring action to the meaningful long-term outcome. Remind yourself why this specific spreadsheet matters.
Right, it's not just a spreadsheet.
It is not just a chore. It is a necessary active building block toward a larger goal, whether that goal is achieving financial freedom, landing a dream job, or finally becoming a confident, fluent communicator. You are anchoring the short-term discomfort to a long-term reward.
So to bring all of these threads together for you today, procrastination is not a permanent character flaw. It is not a symptom of laziness, and it does not mean you lack drive. It is merely a habit.
A very common one.
It is a deeply ingrained emotional coping mechanism designed by your own mind to protect your ego from fear, anxiety, and the crushing, paralyzing pressure to be perfect. Your high intelligence is an incredible advantage in this world, but it is an advantage only if you learn to actively manage the overwhelming doubts and the overthinking that naturally come along with it.
The simple awareness of the trap is the most powerful tool you have to dismantle it.
Right.
Once you see the invisible wall for what it is, just fear disguised as perfectionism, you can walk right through it.
Exactly. So the call to action for you is clear. The next time you find yourself delaying, the next time you feel that sudden, undeniable urge to reorganize your spice rack or deep clean your keyboard instead of opening that daunting document, pause.
Just take a breath.
Just laugh gently at your mind's clever little excuses. Take a deep breath. Offer yourself a little bit of grace. Break the massive task down into a tiny, completely impossible to fail micro step, and just focus on the next 5 minutes. You do not have to be perfect. You just have to start.
I think the most powerful takeaway requires looking inward at your own landscape. Think about your life right now. What is one deeply important task, project, or dream that you've been putting off simply because you are waiting for the perfect time, or you want the result to be absolutely flawless?
That's a great question.
What if the only thing actually standing between you and that goal isn't a lack of time, And it certainly isn't a lack of ability, but simply an excess of your own imagination.
So tonight, when the clock strikes midnight, don't let it be a moment of panic over zero progress. Let it be the moment you finally stop staring at the blank canvas, lower your standards, and just put some messy paint on the board. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.